In the silence that follows the fixed drum, a new sound defines the passage of the night. It is not the sound of the watchman's clapper, not yet. It is a more elemental, more constant sound. It is the sound of time itself, measured out in water. Inside the watch huts and in the towers of the night watch headquarters, the water clock, or Luke, is the true master of the nocturnal hours. Let us imagine ourselves inside one of these small huts. It is a simple square building of brick and timber, perhaps at the intersection of two major lanes. Inside, the air is still and carries the faint mineral scent of well water and the aroma of the burning moss wick of a single lamp. The room is sparse. A low wooden bench, a shelf for a rolled-up mat, a hook for a spare oiled cloth rain cape. But the central object, glowing in the lamplight, is the water clock. It is a beautiful, functional artifact. Two large polished bronze basins are mounted on a wooden stand. The upper basin, the receiving vessel, has a small, meticulously calibrated overflow spout. A slender copper tube sealed with wax until the precise moment projects from its base. The lower basin, the collecting vessel, sits on a graduated scale. It is into this basin that the water, drop by drop, falls. At the beginning of the night watch, just as the last drumbeat fades, the watch officer performs a ritual. He carefully fills the upper basin to the brim from a large earthenware jug. He ensures the water level is exactly at the lip of the overflow spout, not a drop more, not a drop less. Then, with a practiced hand, he pierces the wax seal on the copper tube with a fine needle. A single fat droplet forms, swells, and falls. Plick! It lands in the empty bronze basin below. The night is officially being measured. The watchman's entire routine is governed by this slow, liquid metronome. The night is divided into 5 watches, each roughly 2 hours long, marked by the level of the water in the lower vessel. The scale beside it is not marked with numbers, but with elegant seal script characters denoting the watches. First watch, second watch, third watch, and so on. The lamp's flame flickers, casting dancing light on the water's surface, which slowly, imperceptibly, begins to rise. While a water clock measures the grand segments of the night, the watchman carries a more personal timekeeper, his lantern. Let us look at it more closely now as he might, while trimming its wick before a patrol. The frame is made of 4 slender strips of flexible bamboo, steamed and bent into hoops, then lashed together with silk cord to form a cube. Over this frame, panels of thick mulberry bark paper are glued. The paper is treated with a solution of alum and tung oil, making it translucent, durable, and mildly resistant to the inevitable damp of the night air. One side of the lantern is a hinged door, also papered, to allow access inside. Within, the light source is a simple dish. It is a small round ceramic bowl, glazed a plain cream color on the outside, but left unglazed on the shallow interior to better absorb the oil. The oil itself is pressed from rapeseed, a clear, golden, thin liquid with a faint, slightly nutty smell. The wick is a narrow braid of dried river reed pith, which burns with a steady, low, and remarkably smoke-free flame. The whole lantern, when lit, becomes a warm, glowing cube of honey-colored light. It does not project beams, but instead illuminates the watchman himself, making him a recognizable, gentle beacon in the darkness. It casts just enough light at his feet to avoid the occasional loose stone or puddle, and to read the official wooden tablet that lists the night's password, a single, changed character, issued from the magistrate's office. His other constant companion is the clapper. Its sound is the voice of the night. Carved from a single aged block of wutong wood, it is about the length of a man's forearm. The artisan who made it hollowed it out with fine chisels, leaving a resonant chamber, and then split it part way along its length with a precise saw cut. This creates the distinctive, dry clack. The mallet is a separate piece of harder wood like jujube, its handle worn smooth by generations of palms. The watchman's grip on it is loose and familiar. When struck, the sound is not musical, but it is clear. It is a sound that travels down narrow lanes, through paper windows, into the subconsciousness of sleepers, where it is registered not as an intrusion, but as a reassurance, a temporal landmark in the formless landscape of dreams. And what of the man himself? His clothing is tailored for silent, enduring movement. His tunic is cross-collared and fastened with cloth knots, no metal buckles to clink. The sleeves are cut wide at the shoulder, but taper slightly at the wrist, allowing for ease of movement without being baggy. The trousers are loose and tied at the ankle above his cloth shoes. Over everything, he may wear a baize, a long, sleeveless vest of padded cotton for the cooler hours before dawn. Its exterior is a plain, undyed hemp, but the inner lining might be a soft, faded blue cloth, a small personal comfort known only to him. In a pouch at his waist, he carries small, personal necessities. A flint and steel for relighting the lantern should a gust of wind sneak through the paper panels. A small cork-stoppered bottle of rapeseed oil, a dried plum or a piece of crystallized ginger, a gift from his wife to stave off the night's chill, and perhaps a tiny worn charm, a small bronze coin with a square hole strung on a red thread, a silent wish for safety. As the water in the clock drips, marking the passage towards the first watch, the watchman waits. This waiting is part of the duty. It is a time of quiet alertness. He might listen to the city's nocturnal symphony, the settling of timber in a nearby house with a soft pop, the scurrying of a harmless bamboo rat in the thatch of a roof, the gentle snores emanating from an upstairs window. He knows these sounds. They are the sounds of a city at rest. Any deviation, a sudden silence, a crash, a raised voice, would stand out to his trained ear like a discordant note in a quiet melody. When the water level finally kisses the mark for the first watch on the bronze scale, he stands. He adjusts his vest. He lifts his lantern from its hook, checks the flame, and closes the small paper door. He tucks the mallet into his belt and loops the cord of the clapper over his wrist. With the final glance at the water clock, he steps out into the lane. The transition from the soft, golden light of the hut to the deep blue darkness of the street is always a moment of adjustment. The air is cooler, fresher. He takes his first few steps, his footsteps deliberately quiet. The light from his lantern pools around his feet, illuminating the worn stones, a patch of moss near a drain, the base of a wall. He becomes a moving island of warmth and order in a sea of shadows. And then, at the appointed starting point of his patrol, he lifts the mallet. He strikes the clapper 3 times with a firm, even pressure. Clack, clack, clack. The sound echoes briefly off the blank wooden shop fronts and seems to be absorbed by the night. It is the first official announcement of the night's progress. It tells the scholar who has fallen asleep over his books to extinguish his lamp. It tells the mother listening for her child that the world outside is in steady hands. It tells the baker, who will rise hours later to start his oven, that he may sleep a little longer. The watchman then begins his walk. His pace is neither fast nor slow, but inexorable. He is not a man on a journey from one point to another. He is a man embodying a circuit, a human gear in the great quiet clockwork of the sleeping city. His eyes scan without urgency, a shutter that seems slightly ajar, a forgotten merchant's cart that should have been taken inside a courtyard, the glowing embers of a street-side food stall's brazier, which he will note to ensure they die out safely. He moves from the main lane into a narrower alley where the overhanging eaves almost touch overhead, creating a tunnel. Here, his lantern light reflects off the whitewashed walls, making the space feel cozy, enclosed. He knows every house here, the potter's with the always chipped gatepost, the widow who keeps songbirds, the family with the new baby whose faint cry he sometimes hears. His patrol is a thread of consciousness winding through the dreams of Hangzhou. And as we follow his gentle light, bobbing like a firefly down the darkened lane, we can let our own thoughts slow to the pace of his footsteps and to the eternal, patient drip, drip, drip of the water clock, measuring out the peaceful, guarded night. The first watch is now established. The sound of the clapper has rippled out from watch huts and pacing men across the wards of Hangzhou, a network of auditory signals crisscrossing in the dark. For the next 2 hours, the city belongs to the deep, initial wave of human sleep and to the quiet creatures and elements that continue their timeless work. Let us leave the watchman on his patrol for a little while and let our awareness expand like the lantern's soft light to rest upon the city itself in this first phase of the night. We are floating now above the tiled rooftops under a sky often hazy with the day's evaporated moisture from the lake and canals, but sometimes brilliantly clear, dusted with stars the watchmen call heavenly river sand. Below, the city is a vast, dark tapestry. The major thoroughfares are faint, gray ribbons. The canals are strips of darker, liquid obsidian, occasionally wrinkled by a night breeze, catching a sliver of moonlight like a quick silver smile. But what dominates the scene are the rooftops, an endless, gently rolling landscape of dark tiles flowing over the contours of the city like scales on a resting dragon. From this vantage, the city seems monolithic, silent, and complete. But let us descend slowly through that tile-covered sky, down into the spaces where life is suspended in rest. Inside the homes, the rhythms of the day have ceased. In the chambers of the well-to-do, the carved luohan beds are enclosed by curtains of fine, dark silk, drawn against drafts and insects. Within, sleepers rest on firm mattresses stuffed with dried rice husks or fragrant hay, their heads on porcelain or lacquered wooden pillows cool against the cheek. The air is still, carrying only the scent of the sleeper's own breath and the lingering, ghostly fragrance of the sandalwood incense burned at dusk. In the simpler, timber-framed houses of the artisans and shopkeepers, families sleep on raised platforms of brick or packed earth, covered with woven grass mats. Here, the night sounds are more immediate, the soft rustle of a turning body, the sigh of a child, the contented grunt of a dog sleeping beneath the platform. The papered windows glow faintly with the last embers of the cooking fire in the central hearth, now banked with ash for the night. And in the countless rented rooms and attic spaces above shops, the students, the clerks, the solitary laborers have extinguished their small economical lamps. They lie in the absolute dark, the sounds of the city, a distant dog, the watchman's far-off clapper, the water in the nearby canal, filtering up through the floorboards, a lullaby of urban solitude. But the city is not entirely asleep. Its essential functions continue at a slow nocturnal pulse. Down by the great imperial canal, which threads through the city like a main artery, there is a different kind of life. Here, families live entirely on their boats. These are not the cargo junks of the daytime, but smaller, covered sampans and houseboats, moored in dense, floating neighborhoods. A faint, warm light seeps from between the bamboo mats that form their curved roofs. Inside, a fisherman's wife might be mending a net by the light of a tiny fish oil lamp, her fingers moving with automatic precision. The baby sleeps in a woven basket suspended from the roof beams, rocking gently with the boat's natural watery cradle. The water itself whispers constantly against the hulls, "Shush, shush, shush," a sound so constant it becomes silence itself to those who live upon it. Nearby, in the official granaries and warehouses that line the canal for easy transport, the night watch takes a different form. Here, teams of guards, more formal than our lane watchmen, maintain a stationary vigil. They sit on low stools inside gateways, playing quiet games of Go or Zhangqi by lantern light, their concentration a form of watchfulness. Their tools are different, rattles made of bamboo and small handheld drums ready to raise a cacophony of alarm should any threat approach the empire's stores of rice and silk. But for now, the only sound is the click of a game piece on a wooden board. Above it all, in the towers of city walls and the high pagodas of temples, another set of eyes watches. The military watchmen gaze out over the sleeping metropolis and the darkened countryside beyond. Their concern is the horizon, the perimeter. They communicate not with clappers, but with lantern signals, shuttering their larger metal-bound lamps to send coded flashes of light to the next tower down the line, a silent visual confirmation that all is well on the grand scale. From their vantage, Hangzhou is a vast, shallow bowl of darkness, cradled between the distant, invisible hills and the vast, murmuring sea. Back within the lanes, our watchman continues his circuit. His path is not random. He follows a prescribed route that ensures every street, every blind alley is passed at least twice a watch. He walks past the night markets that have now fallen completely still. Earlier, just after dusk, these areas were lively with a different energy. Stalls selling hot, sweet Tangyuan dumplings in ginger soup, vendors of simple wooden toys, storytellers capturing the last of the daylight audience. Now the stalls are empty skeletons covered with oiled cloths. The ground is swept clean, but the air still holds the faint, sweet, and savory ghost of cooked food, a memory of the day's final hunger. He passes the public well in a small square. The stone coping is worn smooth by the ropes of 1,000 daily buckets. In the moonlight, the water in its depths is a black, secret mirror, reflecting a single, bright star. It is silent now, but at the first hint of dawn, it will become a hub of sound and activity, the first social gathering of the day. His lantern light washes over the doorways of craftsmen. Here is the dyer's workshop, its courtyard, empty of the day's riot of color. The long bamboo poles, usually hung with streaming silks in brilliant vermilion, sapphire, and sunflower yellow. The great dye vats, carved from hollowed-out tree trunks, sit still and dark. Their potent mixtures of indigo, madder root, and safflower submerged and waiting for the morning stirring. The smell here is complex: wet earth, crushed plants, and the sharp tang of mordants. Next door is the cobbler's. The watchman's light briefly illuminates the low workbench, the last's strange wooden foot form, the awls and knives laid neatly in a row, the smell of leather and glue hanging in the cool air, a pair of unfinished cloth shoes, soles layered and stitched, waits patiently for the craftsman's return. This is the essence of the first watch, a city in a state of profound pause. The energy of creation, of trade, of argument and artistry has been banked like a fire. It is a time of restoration. The watchman is not just guarding against physical danger, he is guarding this sacred pause. His steady, predictable presence is a tacit agreement with every sleeper. You may let go. You may surrender to the vulnerability of sleep. The city is held. As he completes his first circuit and approaches his hut again, the water clock will be nearing the mark for the second watch. He will enter, note the water level, perhaps take a small sip of cool tea from a stoneware jar, and prepare to go out once more. The cycle is endless, yet each night is unique in its quiet details. The pattern of clouds over the moon, the particular set of sounds, the feel of the air, cool and damp, or still and warm. For now, the first watch holds sway. The dreams of 1,000,000 people drift through the canopy of rooftops, as intangible as mist, and the only waking witnesses are the watchmen, and the patient starry sky, and the eternal whispering water. The water clock marks the transition. The first watch has passed into memory. Now in the heart of the night, the second watch begins. This is a time of deepest stillness for most, a time when even dreams seem to slow their pace. But for a select few within the city's walls, this is the hour of quiet, solitary industry. As our watchman begins his new round, his lantern light will occasionally fall upon these fellow inhabitants of the night, the craftsmen of the shadows. The air has grown colder. A low, gentle mist often begins to form over the canals, creeping into the narrower lanes like a silent, damp visitor. The watchman might fasten the top button of his tunic or pull his sleeveless baisie a little tighter across his chest. His footsteps seem a little louder in the intensified quiet, the crunch of gravel more distinct. His patrol now takes on a new dimension of observation. He knows the nocturnal rhythms of his ward as well as the diurnal ones, and so he is not surprised when, turning a corner into a lane known for its papermakers, he sees a faint, pulsing orange glow emanating from the high paper-covered windows of a workshop. No sound of conversation comes from within, only a low, consistent, mechanical thump, thump, thump. Let us step inside, away from the watchman's path for a moment. The papermaker works through the night for a crucial reason: the process of sheet forming, of lifting the delicate fiber mat from the vat, requires a cool, still, humid environment. The daytime heat and breeze would ruin the consistency, so he works by the light of a single, large oil lamp, its flame reflected in the vast vat of milky pulp before him. The pulp is a mixture of mulberry bark, bamboo fibers, and old hemp cloth, all beaten for days by water-powered hammers until it becomes a fine, silken suspension. The air is thick with the smell of wet cellulose, a clean, earthy, slightly sweet odor. The craftsman, a man with forearms strengthened by a lifetime of this motion, stands before the vat. In his hands he holds a fine bamboo screen mounted on a wooden frame. The mold. With a fluid rocking motion, he dips it into the vat, lifts it, and lets the water drain through the mesh, leaving behind a perfectly even, gossamer-thin mat of interlocked fibers. This is the birth of a sheet of paper. He will perform this motion hundreds of times tonight, stacking the wet sheets between felt cloths. The thump the watchman heard is the sound of the frame being set against the vat's edge to drain. It is a sound of profound patience and skill, a heartbeat of civilization itself. For on paper like this, the poetry, the laws, the accounts, and the dreams of the Song Dynasty are recorded. The watchman nods to himself as he passes the glow. He knows the man inside. He knows the quality of his paper. He moves on. Further along, in a lane dedicated to metalworking, there is no open flame, but a different kind of light. Behind a securely shuttered storefront, a silversmith is at work. His need for night is one of concentration and secrecy, for he is engraving the most delicate of patterns onto a hairpin for a wealthy merchant's daughter. He works under the focused light of a lampstand, a polished brass dish filled with oil, with multiple wicks arranged in a circle. In its center is a clear glass globe filled with water, which acts as a magnifying lens, concentrating the light onto his minute work area. The only sounds are the faint hiss of the wicks and the tiny, precise tick-tick-tick of his fine gravers and punches against the soft metal. The smell here is of burning oil and the sharp, cold scent of metal filings. He works in a pool of brilliant light, surrounded by velvet darkness, creating beauty that will only be fully seen in daylight. Our watchman's route also takes him past the public bathhouses, now closed and silent. But from their great chimneys, a faint, warm, mineral scent of dried sulfur and wet stone still emanates, a reminder of the day's cleansing rituals. He passes the tea merchants' warehouses, where the air is perfumed with 100 different dried aromas, oolong, green, compressed brick tea, seeping through the wooden walls, a dry, complex fragrance that seems sharper in the cool night. And then there are the bakers, not all but some, particularly those supplying the early markets or the inns that cater to pre-dawn travelers, begin their work in the very late first or early second watch. The watchman knows which ones. As he approaches, he first smells the extraordinary scent of fermenting dough, yeasty, sweet, and warm, even before he sees any light. Then a soft, golden glow spills from the high ventilation windows of a basement bakery. Inside, the baker and his apprentice are ghosts in a world of flour. The large brick-lined oven is being steadily fed with bundles of sweet-smelling pine brushwood, heating the interior stones to a perfect, radiating heat. The baker, his face and arms dusted white, is shaping loaves on a long, flour-dusted wooden table. His movements are economical, practiced, a portion of risen dough weighed by feel, shaped, slashed with a quick blade to allow it to expand, placed on a long wooden peel. The only sounds are the rustle of the fire, the soft thump of dough on wood, and the quiet instructions from master to apprentice. Soon the first loaves will be slid into the oven's glowing maw, and a new, richer smell, the smell of baking wheat, the most fundamental and comforting smell in the human world, will begin to perfume the lane. For the watchman, it is a smell that heralds the eventual end of his duty, a promise of the coming day. But that is hours away. For now, he continues, he passes the silent guardian lion statues at the entrance to a wealthy compound, his lantern light makes their stone faces seem to shift and grimace gently. He checks the heavy lock on the neighborhood strong room, where the more valuable stock of local shops is stored communally for safety. He pauses by a small shrine at a crossroads, dedicated to Tudigong, the god of the land. He does not pray, but he gives a slight respectful nod of his head as he passes. It is a nod to the spirit of the place he patrols. These craftsmen of the night, the papermaker, the silversmith, the baker, share a bond with the watchman. They are all keepers of a different kind of flame. They are all engaged in work that sustains the city's body and soul, work that requires the blanket of darkness to proceed. There is a mutual, unspoken respect. The watchman's steady presence allows them to focus on their delicate tasks without fear. Their quiet industries give his patrol purpose. He is guarding not just sleep, but the very acts of creation that will define tomorrow. As he completes another circuit, the mist might be thickening, turning his lantern light into a soft, diffuse globe. Sounds become muffled. The city feels even more secluded, wrapped in a private cocoon of vapor and silence. He strikes his clapper again. Clack, clack, clack. The sound is dampened, but it still carries its message. To the papermaker lifting another perfect sheet, to the silversmith pausing to rub his eyes, to the baker sliding the first peel into the oven, it is a marker. It says, "The night continues, steady and secure. You are not alone in your vigil." And so, the second watch deepens. A symphony of solitary endeavors plays behind closed doors and shuttered windows, the dip of the paper mold, the scratch of the graver, the crackle of the oven fire. It is a symphony without melody, a rhythm of necessity and art. And the watchman walks its periphery, the silent conductor ensuring the peace in which it can be performed. The water in the clock continues its patient ascent. The second watch gives way to the third watch. This is the still point, the deepest trough of the night. The mist, if there is any, hangs at its thickest, turning the world into a realm of softened edges and isolated spheres of lantern light. The air is at its coldest and most still. For the watchman, this is the watch of introspection, of battling the body's natural desire for sleep, and of witnessing the city in its most vulnerable, essential state. His footsteps are automatic now, his body moving with a muscle memory that frees his mind to wander, yet his senses remain acutely tuned. The cold seeps through the layers of his clothing, a clean, sharp feeling that keeps him alert. He can see his breath, a faint, quick puff of cloud that appears and vanishes in the glow of his lantern. The world has narrowed to the circle of his light and the sound of his own measured breath. This is the time when the city's infrastructure reveals itself. With all human activity at its minimum, the underlying elements speak. The watchman becomes an auditor of the urban essence. He walks beside a canal. By day, it is a bustling highway. Now, it is a black mirror. His lantern light does not penetrate its surface, but skims across it, illuminating the stone embankment, the green, velvety moss on the waterline, the precise masonry of the retaining wall. He can hear the water doing its quiet work, a faint gurgle where it passes under a small bridge's arch, a soft lap against the steps of a water staircase where laundry is done by day. The water has its own slow, relentless purpose, flowing imperceptibly towards the river, carrying with it the cool night air. He passes a public incense burner in a small square, a large bronze vessel on a stone pedestal. The day's offerings of sandalwood and cassia are long since ash, but a faint, sweet, smoky scent still clings to the metal, a ghost of daytime piety. His patrol takes him past the city's maintenance sheds. Here, in the daytime, the crews responsible for cleaning the streets and maintaining the canals gather. Now their tools rest in silent ranks, long-handled brooms made of bundled twigs, their ends worn smooth, wooden carts with large iron-rimmed wheels, piles of spare gray roofing tiles, stacks of new wooden boards for repairing shop fronts. They smell of dust, dry wood, and iron. These are the humble instruments of order, waiting for the dawn. And then there are the sounds that define the third watch, not the sounds of work, but the sounds of the city itself, settling, breathing, existing. From within the compounds, he might hear the soft, melancholic note of a xiao, a vertical bamboo flute. Some sleepless scholar or contemplative soul, moved by the depth of the night, is playing a slow, wandering scale. The music is thin, pure, and lonely, weaving through the mist without a destination. It is not a performance for an audience, but a conversation with the night itself. From the rooftops, there is the occasional soft coo of a pigeon, disturbed by a dreaming twitch. Somewhere, a wooden wind chime hanging from the eaves of a temple stirs in a breath of air too faint for the watchman to feel. It gives a single wooden tock, then falls silent. But the most profound sound of the third watch is the sound of snoring. It is a human sound, undignified and deeply trusting. It drifts from upper windows, from courtyard homes, a low rhythmic drone that varies from a gentle hum to a robust rattling gust. To the watchman, this is not a nuisance. It is the chorus of his success. Each snore is a testament to a person so secure in their safety, so deep in unconsciousness, that they have lost all care for how they sound to the outside world. It is, in its way, the most beautiful sound of the night, the symphony of a city at peace. He passes the night watch headquarters for his ward, a slightly larger building. Inside, the officer of the watch is awake, recording the patrols in a logbook with a fine brush. The watchman might pause here, if it is on his route, to give a quiet report. All is tranquil on the eastern loop. The officer would nod, make a small mark in his book, and offer a cup of warm, bland tea from a pot kept warm on a small charcoal brazier. The smell inside is of ink, paper, and charcoal smoke, a dry, administrative smell. The brief exchange is devoid of drama, a simple transfer of fact. Then the watchman steps back into the enveloping night. It is during the third watch that he might perform one of his few active duties beyond observation. He comes across a forgotten bucket left by a door or a shop shutter that has not been fully secured, its latch not quite dropped into place. His intervention is gentle, quiet. He moves the bucket to the side of the lane. He lifts the shutter slightly and lets the latch fall with a soft but definitive click. These are tiny corrections, a smoothing of the edges of the night, ensuring that nothing is amiss, not even a loose object or an unsecured door. His own needs are minimal. From his pouch, he might take the piece of crystallized ginger. The sharp, sweet, warming flavor bursts in his mouth, a tiny festival of sensation in the sensory desert of the deep night. He savors it slowly as he walks. As the third watch nears its end, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurs. It is not in the light, for the dawn is still far off. It is in the quality of the darkness. The absolute velvet black begins to soften ever so slightly towards a deep, cool blue. The stars, if visible, seem to pulse a little less brightly. The mist, if present, might begin to thin at its upper edges. The air loses a fraction of its chill, or perhaps the watchman's body has simply grown accustomed to it. The deepest of sleepers begin their turn towards wakefulness. The symphony of snores might alter its rhythm, pause, and resume in a different key. A baby cries out once softly and is soothed by a half-asleep mother's murmur before silence returns. The watchman feels this shift in his bones. The long descent is over. The night has reached its still, silent base. From this point on, the city will begin, molecule by molecule, dream by dream, its slow ascent towards day. But for now, it rests at the bottom of the well of night, perfectly calm, perfectly still. He arrives at a vantage point, perhaps a small hump-backed bridge over a canal. He stops. He sets his lantern on the stone parapet. He looks out over his sleeping sector, the tile roofs descending in dark waves, the thin ribbons of alley, the faint glow from the baker's window, the absolute black of the canal. He listens to the immense, gentle silence, broken only by the water below and the distant final note of the xiao, fading into nothing. He does not think grand thoughts. He thinks of his own bed, hours from now. He thinks of the taste of the morning congee his wife will have ready. He feels the weight of the night, not as a burden, but as a mantle he has worn well. The water level passes the mark. The fourth watch has begun. The deep, inert cold of the third watch starts to relinquish its grip, not to warmth, but to a different kind of energy, a sense of potential. The night is no longer deepening, it is shallowing. The city begins not to wake, but to stir in its sleep. This is the watch of subtle transitions of first lights and of preparations so gentle they are barely perceptible. Our watchman feels the change. The air is still cold, but it has lost its biting edge. There is a faint, fresh dampness, the precursor to dawn's moisture. The mist, if it hasn't dissipated, begins to lift from the ground, fraying into tatters that catch in the crooks of branches and the angles of rooftops, glowing with a faint internal luminescence from the yet hidden moon or the first suggestion of sky glow. His patrol continues, but his observations now turn to the earliest signs of the city's reanimation. The chorus of snores has diminished, replaced by softer, more regular breathing sounds from behind paper windows. Here and there, a faint yellow square of light appears as a lamp is lit within a bedroom. Not the bright, operational light of the baker, but a small, personal light. A scholar, perhaps, rising early to review a text in the perfect quiet. An elderly person, whose sleep is lighter, deciding to start their day in the serene pre-dawn. He passes the tea-houses that line the more prosperous streets. They are dark and shuttered, but from their back courtyards comes a new sound, the soft crackle and pop of kindling being arranged in large brick stoves. The apprentices are beginning their day's first and most important task, building the fires that will heat the endless kettles of water. The smell of clean, burning pine begins to mix with the night's cooler scents, a promise of warmth and community to come. Now, the watchman's path intersects with other shadowy figures. He is no longer the sole mover in the night. A night soil collector, his cart's wheels wrapped in rags to muffle their sound, moves slowly from house to house, collecting the earthenware jars left discreetly by gates. His work is essential, odoriferous, and performed in this liminal hour to cause minimal offense. The watchman and he exchange a silent nod. Two professionals in the unsung trades of urban life. He sees the water carriers beginning their rounds. Strong-shouldered men with bamboo poles across their backs, from which hang two large wooden buckets, move towards the public wells or the cleaner canal landings. They will make their first deliveries to the tea houses and the homes of the wealthy who pay for the convenience. The sound of water sloshing gently in wooden buckets becomes a new rhythm in the lane, but the most significant change is in the sky. The profound black has softened to a rich velvety indigo. In the east, over the distant hills beyond the city walls, a barely perceptible lightening begins. Not a color, but a lessening of darkness. The stars directly overhead remain bright, but those near the eastern horizon begin to fade, as if dissolving into a deep blue-gray wash. This changed light alters the watchman's world. He no longer relies solely on his lantern. He can begin to see the shapes of roofs and gates without its aid. He might lower the lantern's flame to conserve oil, his figure becoming a fainter golden smudge in the emerging blue gloom. His patrol takes him past the city's numerous temples, Buddhist monasteries, and Taoist shrines. Here, the fourth watch has a sacred name. It is the time of the morning bell and evening drum, and right on cue, as the watchman passes the high walls of a monastery, the sound begins. Not the bell yet, but the deep, resonant boom of a great drum being struck slowly from within. Boom, boom, boom. It is a sound that vibrates in the chest, a call that does not shatter the peace, but organizes it. It is the signal for the monks to rise for their first meditation of the day. Soon after, the clear, high, sweet tone of a large bronze bell will ring out, its pure note hanging in the damp air, washing over the city like a wave of clarity. This sacred timetable, observed for centuries, is woven into the civic fabric. For the watchman, it is the official auditory confirmation that the night is in its final chapter. He also passes the homes of the fishermen who will soon set out on the lake and the river. He can hear quiet activity within, the clatter of bamboo fishing traps being gathered, the soft murmur of a family eating a simple pre-dawn meal of leftover rice and pickled vegetables. The smell of fermented bean paste and steaming rice briefly escapes an open door. The watchman's own body is responding to these cues. The weariness of the third watch is replaced by a second wind, a knowledge that the task is nearing completion. His footsteps might become slightly quicker, his posture a little straighter. The city is coming to life around him, and his role is shifting from guardian of pure sleep to overseer of a safe transition. He performs his final checks. He ensures the alleys near the soon-to-open markets are clear of debris. He notes that the charcoal sellers' stacks of fuel, covered with straw mats, are secure. He passes the animal market, still silent, but he can hear the restless shifting of oxen and the soft bleat of a goat from within the holding pens, sensing the coming activity. As he makes his rounds, the eastern light continues its slow, inevitable work. The indigo bleeds to a cooler, softer blue. The outlines of the tiled roofs become crisp and clear. The paper of his lantern now seems pale and insignificant. The world is returning to color, albeit in a monochrome of blues and grays. He stops at a point where his lane opens onto a broader street leading to one of the city gates. He looks east. He can see the silhouette of the gate's tower, and above it, the sky is now a distinct band of gray-blue. The fixed stars have vanished there. The day is no longer a concept, but a certainty approaching from beyond the hills. He feels a cool breeze, the dawn wind, stirring the night stillness. It carries new smells, the distant wet earth of the countryside, the smoke from 100 newly kindled hearths, the dampness of dew on stone. He lifts his clapper for the fourth watch signal. Clack, clack, clack. The sound is different now. It no longer cuts through a thick silence, but joins a growing tapestry of gentle noise. The insect chorus, the slosh of water, the crackle of fires, the distant bell. It is a sound of conclusion, a final note in a night's long, quiet melody. His duty is almost done. The city is stirring from its collective dream, stretching its limbs in the form of early workers and lit lamps. The watchmen have held the line between dusk and dawn, and they have held it well. The peaceful night is now a tangible thing behind them, a completed work. The final measure of water drips into the bronze basin. The fifth watch commences. This is no longer the realm of night, but the frontier of day. The watchman's role undergoes its most profound shift. From guardian of rest to usher of awakening, the world is now painted in shades of pearl, charcoal, and the softest blue. The eastern horizon is a band of luminous gray, etching the jagged silhouette of distant mountains and the city's own crenellated walls with perfect clarity. Our watchman's movements are no longer those of a solitary sentinel. He is now a moving part in a vast, gentle machine that is cranking to life. The cool air is alive with sound and scent. The bird chorus is a joyous, chaotic symphony from every rooftop and courtyard tree. It is a sound of pure instinct and arrival, welcoming the light. He extinguishes his lantern. Its work is done. The warm, enclosed world of the paper cube is gone, replaced by the expansive, cool light of pre-dawn. He may hang it on the outside of the watch hut, a signal to his relief that the night patrols are complete. Now, his walk is one of final inspection and opening. He moves towards the neighborhood well, which is already becoming a hub of soft chatter and the rhythmic creak splash of the bucket pulley. Women from nearby households gather, their voices low but cheerful, exchanging fragments of news as they draw the day's first water. The sound of the full bucket being set on the stone coping is a solid domestic thud. The watchman pauses here, not to interfere, but to absorb the scene. The sight of daily life resuming is his reward. The smells of the night have been utterly swept away. They are replaced by the smells of morning, the mineral scent of fresh well water, the damp earth from watered courtyard plants, the distinct dry aroma of starched cotton being shaken out as laundry is prepared, and most pervasively, the smoke from 1,000 breakfast hearths. This smoke is no longer the lonely pine of the tea-house stoves, but a richer, more varied perfume. The nutty smell of millet porridge, congee, bubbling in iron pots, the sharp tang of pickled vegetables being fetched from stoneware crocks, the faint, enticing sizzle of scallion pancakes being fried in a little lard. His patrol now follows the routes that will soon be bustling. He walks past the market squares, still empty, but being prepared. Stall holders are arriving, pushing the hand carts with squeaking axles. They unfold simple trestle tables and set out wicker baskets. There is the dry rustle of straw being laid down, the clatter of wooden bowls being stacked. A poultry seller arrives with bamboo cages full of clucking chickens, their feathers a flash of white and red in the gloom. The watchman nods to these early vendors. They are the pioneers of the day. He passes the workshops that were silent at night. The potter is now opening his wide wooden doors, revealing the dim interior where ghostly rows of unfired vessels sit on shelves. The dyer is already stirring his great vats with a long wooden paddle, the viscous liquid swirling in deep, mysterious hues. The rhythmic clang, clang, clang of a coppersmith shaping a vessel begins, a metallic counterpoint to the birdsong. A new, official sound now reverberates through the city, overlaying all others. From the towers of the city gates and the government offices comes the deep, sonorous beating of the dawn drum. Boom, boom, boom. It is slower and more deliberate than the fixed drum of dusk. This is the signal that the fifth watch is official, that the gates may soon be opened, that the business of the empire may resume. It is a sound of permission, of release from the night's confinement. In response to this drum, the watchman completes one of his final duties. He arrives at the mouth of his ward, where a large wooden gate in the interior wall has been closed all night. The gatekeeper, yawning and stretching, is already there, sliding the heavy wooden bars from their brackets. The watchman assists, not because he must, but as a ritual of partnership. Together, they pull one side of the great gate open. It moves with a profound grinding sound of wood on stone, and then a soft whoosh as it displaces the morning air. Light floods into the lane from the broader street beyond. The city is now internally connected again. This is the moment of the watchman's symbolic retirement. His domain, the enclosed secret world of the night ward, has been dissolved back into the whole of Hangzhou. He stands at the threshold, looking in at the waking lane and out at the awakening city. He makes his way back to the watch hut for the last time. The water clock's lower basin is full, the upper one is nearly empty. The night's measure is complete. He might pour the water from the collecting vessel into a drainage channel, watching the stream glitter in the new light, a liquid record of the past hours flowing away. His relief arrives, a fresh-faced man smelling of morning tea and clean clothes. They exchange a few quiet words. Quiet night. One loose shutter on the dyer's alley secured. The Lee family's newborn cried at the third watch, but settled. This is the oral log, the transfer of the night's quiet history. The day watchman takes up his staff, a different tool for a different kind of vigilance, dealing with the bustling sunlit chaos of people and trade. Our night watchman removes his official surcoat if he wore one, folds it, and places it on the shelf. He is now a private citizen again. He steps out of the hut, blinking in the strengthening light. The sky is now a vast pale canopy, streaked with soft pink and gold at the eastern edge. The last of the night's moisture beads on the tile roofs, catching the first direct rays of the sun and sparkling for a brief, glorious moment before evaporating. He walks home, not on his patrol route, but on the main streets now filling with people. Carts rattle past. Shopkeepers are removing the last wooden boards from their fronts, revealing their wares. The calls of vendors begin to rise. Fresh bean curd, hot steamed buns. He is invisible in this crowd, just another man returning home after work. But he feels a quiet, deep satisfaction in his bones. The city has safely navigated another darkness. He arrives at his own modest courtyard gate, pushes it open. The smell of his own breakfast congee, a simple mixture of rice and water with a sprinkle of salt, greets him. His wife, without a word, places a steaming bowl before him on the low table. He sits, finally allowing the night's fatigue to settle upon him, but it is a pleasant wait, earned and honest. As he eats, the sun clears the eastern walls. A solid beam of golden light falls across the courtyard, warming the bricks, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It falls on his shoulders, a tangible blessing. The night watch is over. The day has been delivered intact and peaceful. And high above, the last of the night's guardians, the temple bell, rings one final, clear, solitary note that hangs in the now sunlit air. A pure and fading echo of the darkness that was, and the order that has been preserved once more. We have followed the watchman through the 5 watches of the night, from dusk to dawn. But to truly inhabit that world, to feel its texture as he felt it, we must slow our gaze even further. We must linger on the mundane, the material, the tangible objects and sensations that defined his reality. For his night was not just a sequence of sounds and shadows, but a physical experience of the city's fabric. Let us now, in this quiet space, examine the substance of that silence. Begin with the ground beneath his feet. On the main thoroughfares, the stone slabs were cool, smooth, and unyielding. Over centuries, the center of each slab had been worn into a slight, shallow bowl by the passage of countless feet and cartwheels, so his steps would sometimes find a gentle, polished dip. In the narrower lanes, the surface was packed earth and gravel, a drier, softer texture that gave a faint crunch with each step, a sound so personal it felt like his own private signature on the night. After rain, this earth would hold a cool dampness, and the smell of wet soil would rise, clean and profound, cutting through all other city scents. Now, consider the walls that hemmed him in. They were not blank. The whitewashed plaster of a wealthy compound's outer wall was smooth to the touch, cool and slightly chalky. Over time, it would develop fine hairline cracks like a map of its own aging, visible in the lantern's oblique light. The wooden shop fronts were a different texture entirely. Vertical planks of fir or cedar, their grain raised and smoothed by weather and countless hands. They smelled of dry wood and, faintly, of the goods stored within. The ghost of tea here, the memory of lacquer there. At the joins of these planks, his light would cast deep, vertical shadows. His hands were in constant, gentle contact with his tools. The handle of his clapper mallet was polished by generations of grip, the wood grain feeling like silk under his thumb. The clapper block itself, hanging from its cord, would occasionally tap softly against his leg, a solid, familiar weight. His lantern's bamboo frame was lashed with silk cord, the knots small and hard under his fingertips when he adjusted the paper door. The paper panels, though seemingly fragile, had a surprising toughness, a slight graininess he could feel if he ran a finger over them. They were warm to the touch near the top, where the heat from the tiny flame gathered. And then the scents. We have mentioned them in passing, but let us catalogue them as he might have, as distinct landmarks in the scent map of the night. Each ward had its own olfactory character. In the ward of the silk merchants, even at night, the air held the faint, sweet, slightly dusty smell of raw silk bolts, and the sharper, more astringent scent of the dyes waiting for the morning, madder root like dry earth, indigo like crushed leaves. Near the lacquerware workshops, the smell was pungent and unforgettable, the heady, almost toxic aroma of raw lacquer sap, mixed with the sweeter notes of the cinnabar and gold leaf used for decoration. It was a smell that seemed to coat the back of the throat. Passing a sauce and vinegar brewery, the air was sour, complex, and deeply fermented. Soybeans, wheat, and salt undergoing their slow, magical transformation in giant earthenware jars. It was a humid, living smell. In the residential lanes, the smells were domestic and fleeting, the aroma of a particular wood being burned for warmth, fragrant camphor wood or the resinous pine, the delicate perfume of night-blooming jasmine or osmanthus from a hidden courtyard, the simple, clean smell of washing that had been dried in the sun and now hung in a covered corridor. His own sustenance during the watch was simple and specific. The piece of crystallized ginger from his pouch was not just a treat, it was a sensory event. Its surface was crusted with sugary crystals that sparkled in the lantern light. The first bite was a crackle of sugar. Then the intense, fiery, sweet warmth of the ginger pulp flooded his mouth, waking his senses and spreading a comforting heat through his chest. He might also carry a small flask of warm tea, not fine tea, but a coarse roasted barley tea. It was stored in a hollowed gourd stoppered with a wooden plug. The tea would cool through the night, but sipping it was a ritual. The earthy toasted flavor, the warmth of the gourd in his hands. The clothing he wore was chosen for quiet and endurance. The hemp cloth of his teak was loosely woven, breathable, but could be rough against the skin at the neck and wrists. With time and washing, it softened. The padded baize or vest was a rectangle of quilted cotton, the stitching foremost small diamond-shaped patterns that held the padding in place. In the coldest watches, this vest was a portable hearth, trapping his body's warmth close. His cloth shoes had soles made from layers of old hempen rope, densely stitched. They were flexible and silent, but after hours of walking, he could feel every pebble through them, a constant low-level conversation between his feet and the earth. Even the weather had a texture. On a clear night, the cold was dry and sharp, making the stars seem close enough to touch, and the sounds of the night carried with crystal clarity. On a misty or drizzly night, the world became soft and muffled. The mist was not just visual. It was a physical presence beading on his eyelashes and the wool of his vest, dampening the clapper's sound, making the lantern light a diffuse, glowing orb that seemed to belong to some underwater realm. The drizzle made a sound like a gentle sigh on the tile roofs, and the occasional droplet would fall from a corner of the eaves with a soft plink into a puddle below. Finally, consider the sounds not of activity, but of materiality, the groan of a heavy timber in a house as it cooled further in the night, the skitter of a dried leaf blown along the stones by a faint breeze, the almost inaudible hum of the city itself, a composite of a million breaths of water moving in pipes and canals, of the very earth settling. It was a sound felt more in the bones than heard by the ears. For the watchman, all these textures, smells, tastes, and sounds were the content of his duty. They were not distractions, but the very data of peace. A change in the expected scent, the smell of smoke where there should be none, would alarm him long before he saw a flame. A new sound in the familiar chorus of snores and creaks would focus his attention instantly. His expertise was not just in knowing the streets, but in knowing their normal nocturnal state in all its sensory detail. His night was a slow, unspoken dialogue with the physical city. Each step was a touch, each breath a sampling, each glance an assessment of the material world at rest. He was a caretaker, not of an idea, but of a living, breathing, sleeping entity of wood, stone, water, and earth. The watchman walked his routes in a world apparently emptied of human company. But he was never truly alone. His companions were the other citizens of the night, the non-human inhabitants of Hangzhou, whose lives were inextricably woven into the urban fabric, whose routines were perfectly attuned to the absence of the sun. His night was shared with a kingdom of instinct and quiet purpose. As he paced, his lantern light would occasionally catch the gleam of eyes from an alleyway. A small, neat cat, striped gray and black, would be sitting perfectly still, its tail wrapped around its feet. It was not a pet, but a working resident, tolerated and even welcome for its control of rats and mice. It would watch the watchman pass with an expression of regal indifference, its pupils wide black pools in the dim light. It understood the night shift. Sometimes he would see it later on his return circuit, having moved only a few feet, a statue of silent patience. From the timbered eaves and the spaces between roof tiles came the soft, secretive rustlings of geckos. These small, delicate lizards, pale as moonlight, clung to the walls, hunting moths drawn to the lantern's glow. Their quick, darting movements were like fleeting thoughts made visible. The watchman would hear their faint, chirping call, "Gecko, gecko," a sound so dry and small it seemed to be the voice of the old wood itself. Overhead, the bats performed their silent, erratic ballet. They were swift shadows against the slightly lighter sky, dipping and wheeling as they harvested the night insects. The watchman rarely saw them, but he would sometimes hear the very high, faint click of their echolocation, or the soft, leathery whisper of wings close by. They were the guardians of the air, as he was of the ground. Beneath his feet, in the drains and under the foundations, was another world. He would hear the occasional scratch and scurry of the bamboo rat, a large, harmless rodent. Its sounds were of busy, blind industry, the gnawing on a discarded root, the movement of nesting material. It was a sound of the city's digestive system, of constant, humble recycling. And then there were the dogs, not the fierce guard dogs of the wealthy compounds which were kept behind gates, but the street dogs, the semi-wild companions of the lanes. They knew the watchman. They recognized the rhythm of the patrols. A particular yellow dog with a curled tail might fall into step with our watchman for a block or two, a silent padding shadow just outside the circle of lantern light. There was no interaction, no petting. It was a simple, mutual acknowledgement of shared territory and purpose. The dog would then peel off, perhaps to investigate a scent at a corner, leaving the watchman to his solitude once more. Their presence was a comfort, another set of senses patrolling the dark. But the true sovereigns of the night soundscape were the insects. Their chorus was the constant background hum to his thoughts. As the seasons changed, so did the musicians. In the warmth of late spring and summer, the crickets were the virtuosos. Their chirping was not random. It was a temperature gauge. The cooler the night, the slower and more deliberate their song. The watchman, over years, could tell the approximate watch by the tempo of the cricket chorus, frantic in the early evening, steady and rhythmic in the heart of the night, slowing to a languid pulse by the fifth watch. Men kept fighting crickets in delicate porcelain pots as pets, But the wild ones in the cracks of walls and understones were the true timekeepers. In the trees of the temple courtyards and larger gardens, the cicadas of day were silent, but their shed brown husks clung to the bark, delicate ghosts of their former selves. Occasionally, a moth, large and pale as a fallen leaf, would flutter into the sphere of his lantern, drawn into a dizzy, obsessive orbit around a flame until it either flew off or, tired, settled on the paper panel, its wings slowly opening and closing. Near the canals, the chorus included the frogs. Their deep, resonant juggarum echoed from the stone embankments, a liquid, bubbling sound that seemed to rise from the water itself. They were the voice of the canals at night, a sound so associated with dampness and darkness that to hear it was to feel the coolness on the skin. The watchmen also shared the night with the plants. They were not passive scenery. The willow trees that dipped their branches into the canals would release their seeds in downy clouds on certain nights, and the air would be filled with tiny, drifting ghosts that caught in his beard and on his clothes. The fragrant olive trees, osmanthus, in hidden courtyards would release their sweet, apricot-like perfume most intensely in the cool, still air of the third watch, a sudden gift of scent in the deepest dark. He knew which overhanging ginkgo tree would drop its fan-shaped leaves with a papery tap, tap, tap on the tiles of a porch roof in the autumn, a sound like gentle, natural rain. These unseen lives created a tapestry of presence. They were the background buzz of existence that continued unabated while humanity dreamed. The watchman's patrol was a journey through this living tapestry. He was a moving part of its ecology. His light disturbed the moths. His footsteps paused the cricket's song for a moment before it resumed. His presence was noted by the cat and the dog. He did not rule this nocturnal kingdom. He moved through it with respect. He was a transient, a bipedal anomaly in a world of quadrupeds, flyers, and crawlers. His duty was to ensure that the human world of walls and roofs remained quiet, so that this other, older world could go about its business. The rats could scavenge, the bats could hunt, the plants could release their scents and seeds, all within the secure container of the sleeping city. In a way, they were his colleagues. The cat patrolled for rodents. The bat patrolled for insects. The dog patrolled its territory. And he patrolled the space between, the realm where all these threads intersected. Their collective silent work maintained the balance of the urban night. As dawn approached and the human world began to stir with its cacophony of carts and voices, these nocturnal companions would retreat. The cats would find a sunny spot on a wall. The geckos would slip into crevices. The bats would return to their roosts in hollow trees or temple rafters. The insect chorus would fade, replaced by birdsong. The shift was changing. But for the duration of the 5 watches, they were there. A watchman walking his lonely round was, in truth, in constant, subtle company. The flicker of eyes in the dark, the syncopated rhythm of the insects, the pad of a companionable dog, these were the proofs of a world teeming with life, all of them in their own way keeping watch alongside him.